everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Random Reviewer.
And I'm the Worst Generation.
And welcome to Spooktober. I'm very, very excited for our spooky podcast month. And kicking it off this month, we are doing Child's Play. The 1988 version, obviously, the superior version of Child's Play and just Chucky in general.
I'm sure we'll probably get into the new one.
Yeah, we will.
I figured. So, what is the Chucky series, and I guess more importantly, who wrote it, or who came up with the idea?
Alrighty, are we ready? I'm so excited. This is one of my favorite franchises, which is crazy considering I'm a very soft sort of unicorns and flowers and bunnies type person. Murderous Doll, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Child's Play is the first and only film in the series to be distributed by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer / United Artists, and then Universal bought it. So it was directed by Tom Holland. Not the Tom Holland we know and love in Spider-Man. He wasn't born yet.
I wouldn't have even thought of that, Tom Holland.
The story was written by Tom Holland, John LaFia, and Don Mancini, and it stars Katherine Hicks, Chris Sarandon, and Alex Vincent. Also, Brad Dourif voices Chucky. The film was released on November 9th, 1988.
It's actually, like, if you think about it, it's like watching the first one, because I'd seen the first bits of the first one, like, years and years and years ago when I couldn't, like, really remember it. But, like, because we watched the sequels before we actually watched the first one. And, like, as far as horror movies go, it holds up really quite well, even though there's some little bits that I think we'll get into later.
Yes, definitely. I really didn't expect to love the Chucky series the way I do, but I'm a huge major fan. Really quickly, before we dive all the way into this, I do want to note that this podcast looks different than our other podcasts.
Oh yeah, we have no slides.
Welcome to our new format. This is trying to make it more available for our podcasters that don't watch us on YouTube. So we're going to try a new format and see how it works.
Also, it's a little easier for us. Slideshows aren't hard, but they're also incredibly hard.
They take a lot of time. But it's the same amount of research, the same stuff that you guys love, just not as many pictures. If you guys really miss the slides, we can maybe work something out with like a picture slideshow, but we're going to be kind of using this format from now on for our Pocket Cast and Spotify listeners.
Mm-hmm. Which will probably be, if you're listening to this on Spotify, this is the first episode you've listened to on Spotify. So congratulations.
Or you've gone back and are listening to this one. So, hey, Welcome to the beginning. Well, like 5 episodes past the beginning, but you get the message.
Could be worse. Anyways, Child's Play. I'm guessing that we would start at the beginning, because this isn't a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yes. Although if Quentin Tarantino had done this movie,
there'd be a lot more racial slurs.
Different. Anyways, Child's Play. Back to what we're talking about. Also, we don't have a current event this week. That's just because things have been really crazy in our lives, and also the world is kind of crazy right now. If you miss current events, we're sorry. We'll have one next time. Mm-hmm. But we will say, get your vaccine. I know that's probably might date us if you're listening to this later. Please get your COVID vaccine. Please get your COVID boosters. It's for the safety of all of us. So that's kind of
not all of us can be a demon possessed doll that doesn't have to worry about vaccines
or COVID. Yeah, no, exactly. So
Chucky's just a higher life form than us.
We're actually going to talk about that.
Of course.
I have questions, okay? So we're going to talk about that. So first, what is Child's Play? If you have not seen Child's Play, it is a possessed doll, basically. So the summary for Chucky that I literally pulled off the back of like a DVD.
Which you probably, if you haven't seen it, should probably watch it before you hear 2 people discuss the whole entire series.
Yeah, I mean, it would help. But if you haven't seen it, gunned down by Detective Mike Norris, dying murderer Charles Lee Ray uses black magic to put his soul inside a doll named Chucky, which Karen Barkley then buys for her young son Andy. When Chucky kills Andy's babysitter, the boy realizes the doll is alive and tries to warn people, but he is institutionalized. Now Karen must convince the detective of the murderous doll's intentions before Andy becomes Chucky's next victim.
Cuts out a lot of stuff that actually happens in the film.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But I feel like for the first film, that's kind of a theme.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something I agree with completely. That's not, if I were to do a summary of Chucky, it would be, is the doll's alive, or is it? It's just a doll, or is it?
Yeah, the first one is, they play that up a lot of questioning whether or not the doll is real. Or if it's, alive.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about why that happens. But first, let's go into the cast of Chucky.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, our main man, our number one, Brad Dourif as Charles Lee Ray / Chucky. He voices the doll. So Brad Dourif has not done a ton of stuff. Chucky is definitely his most notable role. However, if you've seen Lord of the Rings, he is Grima Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings. So you can... So he is in there, but honestly, I went back and watched it with him, and I'm like, oh, that is him. And then I'm like, yeah, I would not have pulled that out.
Yeah, no, it's kind of...
But it is. What a range of doing creepy things. So John Franklin, he plays Chucky when he walks and moves.
Mm-hmm.
So when you in the film, when you see Chucky running or moving or doing things, that is definitely a full body suit. It's played by John Franklin. He was in Children of the Corn. So this is not his first horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So he was definitely used to the vibe here. So that I found that interesting. I was like, dang, what a double whammy to do like 2 horror movies like back to back.
Yeah.
And then he Macaulay Culkin and literally didn't do anything else.
He Macaulay Culkin and just is it confirmed that he became a Subway artisan?
Dude, I did not go that far. I looked up to see what other movies he had done, and after Chucky, kind of nothing.
Okay.
He did appear in some TV shows, but, you know.
Yeah.
So Katherine Hicks is Karen Barkley. So she was in Star Trek, the original Star Trek, and then she was also, her most notable role is she played Marilyn Monroe in Marilyn, the Untold Story.
Ah.
And I'm like, wow, that's cool. Chris Sarandon is Detective Mike Norris. And if you recognize that name, it's because it's Humperdinck. It's Prince Humperdinck from The Princess Bride.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that moment.
And so now I'm like, I can't watch that with a straight face. I'm like, that witch, that dream within a dream. Skip to the end.
Ah, shut up! And then, like, it just gets stabbed by a fucking doll.
Oh my god. Be back, witch. I am not a witch. I am your wife. But it's a Chucky doll.
God.
So then Alex Vincent as Andy Barkley, he actually owns his own production company now. He worked on Frostbite, the 2012 zombie movie. He was the sound designer. So he didn't act anymore, but he just went and bought his own production company, and he's actually credited on different movies as a sound designer.
Which we'll also get into him later.
I love Andy Barkley. I love Alex Vincent as Andy Barkley. Dinah Manoff was Maggie Peterson. She played Marty Maraschino in the film Grease, which is not something... Honestly, I've seen Grease, and I, like... You could tell me this again, and I could probably pick it out, but it was another one of those things where it's like, oh, that's why she's familiar, but she's also in the movie for, like, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
She gets murdered real quick. Tommy Swelderlow is Jack Santos, and he is Ginger Moss in Howard the Duck, and the troop leader in Spaceballs.
You know, one good movie and one not so good movie.
You can interpret that as you want. So Jack Colvin is Dr. Ardmore.
Howard the Duck is like a amazing piece of media.
Oh my god, we're gonna get canceled. Raymond Oliver as John Dr. Death Bishop. That's our cast. That's our main cast and some other trickle people that I put in there. So it wasn't just like 3 characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the cast of Chucky. So let's dive into the doll Chucky itself. You've got a latex doll, but its face is latex, but its whole body is just stuffed. So it's like a Cabbage Patch doll or a Raggedy Ann, but it's actually based off of a real doll.
Yeah, it's based off of, what was it?
The My Buddy doll by
yeah,
Hasbro.
My Buddy. because that was like they had like a bear version. There was a bear that would talk, if I remember right. My mom talked about it and how she hated it, but everyone else wanted it.
So it was a brand made by Hasbro in 1985. So they made this doll to appeal to little boys to teach them about caring for their friends. It basically was this idea of boys can be sensitive and be kind. They don't need to be abusive and mean and in toxic masculinity. And then we went and made a movie about it being a murderous doll, and Hasbro discontinued the line because it failed after that.
I wonder why. Oops.
Yeah, but it's super duper. It's actually really cool. It's interesting looking at it because the director will talk about how his inspiration for Chucky was the My Buddy doll. But it's not the same doll. But I don't know. My Buddy had the brown hair, the white striped long t-shirt, the red overalls, the logo, the freckles, the nose, and like all of that is very similar to Chucky. And so I feel like, I don't know, it's like Chucky is me saying, "Mom, can I have My Buddy doll?" And she going, "No, we have My Buddy at home."
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's like, "Can I have a My Buddy doll?" "No, we got one at home."
The My Buddy doll at home. It's Chucky tries to kill you. It's fine.
I was trying to think of something Chucky would say. Oh, God. And I couldn't think of anything.
End of the line, motherfucker.
Yeah, that's pretty much something.
Yeah, so then Play School bought the My Buddy doll and made it into something different now. You can actually buy one, and it looks kind of more akin to like a Cabbage Patch Kid. Mm-hmm. They tried to step away from it looking like Chucky. I
wonder why.
I also want to point out that an African-American version was made of this doll in that time period.
Really?
Yes, and I feel like that's very incredibly important to point out because you could buy an African-American My Buddy doll, but you could not buy an African-American Barbie.
Yeah, that wasn't going to be for like another like. When did Barbie start introducing?
And they're always more expensive.
Yeah, they're always
that's always like. So, or you couldn't find them anywhere, or if you did find them, they were expensive, or it was the flip coin where nobody wanted them because they wanted like the white one, and It's just like, yeah, no. We'll talk about toy and racial inconsistencies and how deep-rooted racism is in our society in another podcast. But I did want to point out that they did have a version of one that you could purchase, which is not something I expected from the 80s at all. So it was based off a real doll. And you can go on eBay and buy the original My Buddy doll that it's based off of.
They're just like super expensive right now, right? Yeah.
You can buy like the original 1988 one. Any My Buddy doll from 1985 to 88, which is what Chucky is based off of, is going to be $200 or $300. Past that into the 90s, you can buy one for $20 to $30.
Okay.
I looked into it this morning. I really thought about buying one. I really was like, what if I just...
You could buy a Chucky doll if it's in the box for like $500 or $80 from Spirit. Was it Spirit?
Yeah, it was Spirit. Not an ad. Actually, I was looking at... So if you Google My Buddy doll, Chucky will come up. And
That's great.
I was looking at Chucky dolls at work today on my break. And my coworker was like, "That is the most terrifying computer screen I've ever seen. What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm trying to buy a doll. It's a toy." And she goes, "Oh my God, no." She has a toddler, so I get it. So I'm like, "Oh my God."
So I'm guessing the next part is talking about the story or production. It's talking about production.
It's talking about production. We'll go into the story a little bit with production. Mostly more about because I kind of just want to dive into what makes Chucky so cool and have aged actually pretty well practically.
Yeah, because a lot of the because it's definitely aged better than a lot of like newer movies have aged in like a 5-year span.
Yeah, and that's mostly tied to the fact that Chucky didn't use any CGI until the third movie, and the only CGI they used was to make the lips move.
Which I feel like is passable.
But like everything else was practical. In the first film, Chucky was actually a team of 9 puppeteers.
Gosh.
And he would move Chucky's mouth wearing a rig that captured his own mouth movement.
God, I'm Chucky's mouth today.
Like, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 8 people were in charge of moving the doll's head, face, limbs, eyebrows. Takes 3 people on the face.
God.
Is that crazy or what? By the curse of Chucky, Chucky's mouth was actually, you could use like a radio control, so you didn't have to wear the rig anymore. Mm-hmm. So 40 years later...
It didn't require
It didn't require it anymore. But they still used practical effects, which I think is part of the reason that I love Chucky so much, is that it's all practical. Mm-hmm. Like, I was really worried when we watched like Cult and Curse of Chucky that they were going to start CGI.
Yeah, but they didn't, and I feel like that really
and that I really liked it. I was really excited by that the whole time. Mm-hmm. I also, when Chucky had to move around in wide shots, a little person actor would act in that costume. Mm-hmm. And in the scene where Chucky runs down the hallway behind Maggie before he kills her, Chucky was actually played by Alex Vincent's younger sister.
That's right, yeah.
And I just want to think about the director. What was that?
Well, I mean, my whole theory was that she was just there, like, her mom brought her, to be like, oh, and what's
Alex
is, in this movie, and she's just playing in the corner, and they're like, how are we going to get this scene? And the director just looks over and is like, hey, do you want to wear this wig for a moment? It's like,
I will give you one whole donut if you run from here to here with this wig. Can you do that for me?
I mean, that's pretty much probably what happened in all honesty.
I assume that, like, the mom signed a waiver or whatever, because I know that if you're under, like, 16 or 17, your parents have to sign a waiver for you to be in anything that's R-rated. Mm-hmm. And you can't watch your own screening.
Yep. Because that makes sense.
Can you imagine Alex Vincent's 17th birthday? He's going to having a Chucky party.
I'm going to finally watch my own movies I've been in for the past, like...
By the time he was 13, I promise you he watched it.
Yeah.
Because it came out on DVD, but that's just amazing. I like to think about what's going through that mom's head who just brought her kid, and they're like, can we turn your daughter into a voodoo doll? One scene. Promise. 20 minutes tops. Yeah, because there are labor laws, so they probably couldn't have his sister on set for more than like 30 minutes or something. Mm-hmm. I just think it's amazing. So, and also, John Franklin was taller than the doll. Mm-hmm. So they would make the set bigger, so to fit him. So he would be normal sized, and they would just make the set bigger so that he would run back and forth and it would look the same.
Yeah, it's kind of like the forced perspective scene in Elf.
Yes.
Where it's like, in theory, it's like, how the hell do you make this work? But it works well.
Yes, it does. And it's also like, if you've seen Darby O'Gill and the Little People, where they have, whenever there's a leprechaun, they have a set object that is like 50 times the size of what it would be normally to make him look small. And then they had him like 20 feet behind Darby O'Gill, so that it looked like he was talking to a leprechaun that was only like a foot tall. Kind of just like that. Which, once again, is amazing that they took the time and the effort to do this as opposed to just CGIing it.
But it was the 80s. CGI wasn't... what year did the Terminator come out?
Oh, dude. No.
Well, I'm trying to think of what CGI looked like at that time, if it was going to just be easier to use practical effects, or if even they were using CGI.
What year did Jurassic Park come out? Because that is like the big
90s.
First movie that I remember with like a ton of CGI in it.
Yeah, it was. I think Jurassic Park came out in the 90s, roughly. I don't think CGI was really that prevalent at that time, or if it was just in its infancy.
Yeah, Jurassic Park is like 95 or 94.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, The Goonies was that time. Batteries Not Included was in that time, and that was animated. Mm-hmm. So, Ghostbusters came out a year or two before that.
Oh, true. But...
And they animated their, like, lasers. So that's what it would have looked like.
Yeah, but that was kind of more like stop motion and then more or less kind of a hand-drawn over the film, I thought.
That's a great question. We could do Ghostbusters soon, but probably not. At least not this Spooktober. Maybe next time. Or we could do Ghostbusters another time. Let us know what you want. We are very open to movie suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think that does really help Chucky age, is that watching it now, it still looks like a killer doll.
Yeah, it still looks good. Movies that were released in the 90s that rely, like, I'm looking at like sci-fi movies, those aged really terribly even if they had just gone with a practical effect.
Yeah, I agree. So that's kind of where that one, so I just think they put the work and the effort behind it and it really paid off. Mm-hmm. So one of the arguments for Chucky is that the first movie isn't cohesive. Like, it feels like you're missing information, or like certain things happen. You're like, wait, how did we get here? That's because the original movie was more than 2 hours long. It was actually 2.5, 3 hours long. And they had to cut out a bunch of scenes that would have made the movie make more sense.
And that's really my only big gripe with the scene is it's like the scenes they cut out were like important.
Yeah, no, I think so. Some of the scenes, so like the first scene they cut out is in the original opening. Detective Mike is dressed in a woman's clothing in order to catch Charles Lee Ray. If you actually watch the movie, you can see him throw down a dress.
Yeah, I do. In the first scene. Yeah.
But here's the thing. So I am actually okay with that being cut out. And the reason being that I feel like that could really come off as transphobic now. So I'm okay that one didn't make it in there. And also I feel like it doesn't add anything to the plot.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. Like that one I'm fine with.
It's like almost an attempt at like a strange comedy.
Yeah, it's like and then it's a throwaway that would have been like kind of offensive. So
yeah, it probably just kind of fucked up the tone of the movie too,
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the other things is Andy showing Chucky his room, and then is skipped, which I guess was important because it helps build on the fact that and explains where Andy's dad is, and that he died.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of, and that also it helps Chucky pin on that emotional weakness that Andy has. Mm-hmm. And so that's one. The third one is where Andy actually falls into a ditch in front of Eddie Caputo's hideout as it explodes. So it explains how he survived it because it looks kind of like he's in front of the house when it explodes.
Yeah,
but he actually fell in a ditch and they cut it out.
Minorly, I guess that one's more forgivable,
The fourth one is Chucky's friend performing a ritual dressed in voodoo priest clothes. I'm okay with that being cut out because the whole voodoo, like, black magic witch doctor is very racist and very offensive, and it does not age well. So the less of that, the better. Mm-hmm. So, I'm
sure
okay with that one.
Tasteful way to go about it, but not for the time and not how they went about it.
Andy befriending a young girl during his time in the mental hospital, and later on Chucky tricks the same girl to help him find Andy.
That's like a really important scene that they cut out.
And then there's more footage of Chucky stalking Andy at the mental hospital, but I agree because Chucky just finds him right away and it makes zero sense.
Yeah, and then his mom's talking to the girl,
who then explains where Andy is, and you have no idea how she knows.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, I guess she just knows. It feels kind of like that was written in like halfway through the script, even though it wasn't. It was just kind of, but it feels that way.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The DVD commentary also mentions like there's an alternate ending where Mike is the one that kills Chucky by decapitating him with a baseball bat.
Oh my gosh.
And actually, the crazy thing is you cannot find the deleted scenes online anywhere. The director, Tom Holland, says that his scenes were in his script and that he shot them, but they just deleted them when they cut them.
That's really sad because I feel like it would have been nice to see the whole thing, but I guess
I want the director's cut of Child's Play.
But this was kind of like, I'm trying to think of like when director's cuts were becoming a thing, and I know that kind of stems around what was the movie? It's got Harrison Ford in it. It's a sci-fi movie. Blade Runner.
I was supposed to be like, you're not forgetting the name of Star Wars.
No, Blade
Okay.
Runner. Because I know
Okay.
Blade Runner is one of the first, like, director cuts, or it's one of the big first director cuts, so it might have just been before that.
Let us know in the comments what you thought of Jack Snyder's director's cut of Justice League, because I have mixed feelings about that. So.
Woo, superhero movies. I totally get it.
I would pay money to sit and watch a 3.5-hour director's cut of Chucky, of the 1988 Child's Play, where they put in all of the scenes that they deleted.
That would be really fun. That would be really good. I feel like that would help the movie a lot. And make it stronger, because I feel like the Chucky movies get stronger as you go on, and then they don't get as strong, and then they get better.
Yeah. No, I agree. Here's a fun fact. Ed Gale was hired to play Chucky for the fire scene. He's a professional stunt guy, which is why he was hired, and he's 30% taller than the actual doll. So he's only 2 feet tall, I think, 1.5 feet, 2 feet. So they built a living room stage, a completely brand new set that was 30% the exact amount bigger, and then actually set him on fire because he's a trained professional. Mm-hmm. So in the scene where Chucky's on fire, that is a real person on fire.
I love that. I mean, I was going to say it sucks to be him, but like he was trained to be set on fire. So.
Yeah, it wasn't the intern.
How was your day at work, honey? They set me on fire. It was pretty good.
Oh my gosh. That fire scene is incredibly intense. Also, like, because Brad Dourif is screaming in that scene. Mm-hmm. And according to an interview with Brad, his daughter, Fiona, who was 7 at the time, so he had a recording room in his own house, and he would record separately and sometimes just send them in. Because he had a 7-year-old daughter who wouldn't stay home with their kid.
And he has
because you're going to bring them to a horror set, right?
Yeah, and he has the ability to just sit at home and just record it, if you have all the setup. So,
which I realize now that makes Fiona and Alex the same age.
Oh yeah.
So that makes Brad would have been old enough to be Alex's dad. That's interesting. Anyways, Fiona had snuck into his recording room, and he didn't know that she was in there, and so he started screaming because he was recording for his agony scene, and she started crying. She freaked out. And I'm like, that poor girl.
Yeah.
That had to have traumatized her. Fast forward about 20 years and introducing Nika, the brand new star of the Chucky reboot, and that's Fiona Dourif. Her daughter went on to play Nika in the later Chucky movies. And I'm just like, well, you got to keep it in the family.
Yep.
Also, can you imagine your dad? You're in a movie, and it's your dad's voice that's trying to kill you.
Yeah, that is kind of awkward. Also, it gets a little bit more awkward when you think about it.
I try really hard not to think about that.
Think about the which we'll get into. Anyways, continuing on.
So, according to director Tom Holland, the shot of Maggie falling to her death was achieved by having a stunt woman do the main shot, followed by a concrete-filled dummy. When it hit the car, it had charges underneath the windows that caused it to explode and shatter them. So they just dropped concrete onto a Dodge truck.
Call it good. Call it a day.
It wouldn't be an 80s movie if a car didn't break someone's fall.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an 80s movie if they didn't just decide to do it in the most dangerous way possible by throwing cement on top of a car with explosions in it.
It's insane. Absolutely insane. Now, there are a couple things I do want to dive into a little bit. For example, what is the strength of a murder doll?
I feel like they kind of talk about it. They don't talk about it. I don't remember. I feel like, he seems very strong.
Here's the thing. So, Karen throws him over the couch like he's nothing, but then also can't get him off her when he's biting her. And I'm like, I don't understand the strength or physics here.
I don't think there is.
And he can't possibly weigh the same amount because Andy carries him.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I thought, is that he weighs as much as a doll, but he has the strength as if he was just a full-grown Charles Lee Ray.
It's the ant. Is it like the ant where he's like the small and he doesn't weigh very much, but he has 6 times his strength?
Exactly.
Of a doll.
There's some confusing bits, but I feel like you just can't look into those bits a bit because, yeah.
Yeah, I sat there for a minute today and I was like, huh, what is the strength of a murder doll? Like, does Annabelle have the same properties? I mean, she's possessed by a demon, so that's different, but you know.
Mm-hmm. Who knows?
Also, how do you kill Chucky? Because they tried really hard. They set him on fire. They shot him a bunch. They decapitated him.
I thought it was they had to they needed to hurt his heart. They needed to break his heart.
So they like shot him in the heart, but would that have worked forever? Or was that just because he was becoming more human? Like at the very beginning, like if you had stabbed him in the heart, would that have done anything?
I don't think so, because it was the whole point was that he needed to figure it out. He needed to switch bodies before he turned human within his doll form. So I figured it was just because it was so late in the process that they could kill him. Because remember in the beginning, he's like, I can't feel pain. I could get shot. And then he's like, I got fucking shot and I felt it. So that was like him like being like, I'm turning human.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of assumed the more human he became, the more pain he could be inflicted on.
So here's another thing. Chucky exists in the same universe as Jason and Freddy Krueger.
Oh, because of the scenes in Bride of Chucky?
Well, there's that one. Well, because in Bride of Chucky, Michael Myers also exists in that universe. But the director actually talked about at some point having a crossover with Freddy Krueger. And we know that Jason exists in the same universe as Freddy Krueger.
Oh, yeah. You know, I kind of don't like to believe that because I feel like it kind of ruins it for me.
But the director said so.
The director can be wrong.
About his own creation?
Yeah, you know, author's intent versus reader's interpretation. That's my reader's interpretation.
Speaking of same universe things, can we, for 1 second, I had this thought today. So, Andy has a doll that comes to life.
Mm-hmm.
Andy from Toy Story has toys that come to life. What the fuck, Pixar?
Do you think that was intentional, or do you think they...
There's no way. There's so, like, Toy Story came out in the 90s, okay? So, like, there is no way that like, Chucky was not, like, there was no way that they were not aware of Chucky. Because
True.
remember, the second and the third one came out a couple years later consecutively.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that Toy Story, because it took 5 years to animate, was in production at the same time as these movies were coming out and becoming Halloween classics and cult favorites. True. They knew what they were doing.
And I guess there is a fair amount of Shining references in Toy Story too, so...
As there is in Chucky. He takes an axe to break down the door.
God. Here's Chucky.
There's even a detective named Sid in Chucky. You see him in one scene in the apartment, and I'm like, dude, that's terrible. Okay, Ian, when your future child asks to watch the movie with Andy, they mean Toy Story, not Chucky.
Oh, gosh. I thought they just wanted to watch Seed of Chucky.
No. We're not showing them Seed of Chucky. Jeez Louise.
That's the best one.
I love Seed of Chucky. First of all, don't joke about that. Glenn/Glenda. That whole movie, full disclosure, that entire movie is transphobic. That whole entire movie is transphobic. The entire, is it a boy, is it a girl, Glenn/Glenda stuff is transphobic. Britney Spears got into a feud with Chucky over the fact that he killed her lookalike in the movie. And her lawyers had drafted up a thing that said that she was not in the movie. Whole thing.
I think that is, I mean, that's kind of like that's to me like absolutely hilarious. I guess we need to get back to Child's Play 1 though, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We'll cover other Child's Plays on different days, but we're on 1.
We're just, okay.
But I do want to talk about, while we're talking about other Chucky movies, the 2019 movie is trash. Welcome to your random rant of the day.
It is You know, like, I remember that we had said, like, we thought it was going to be bad, but I didn't realize how bad it was actually going to be.
I am so upset. I can barely fathom my rage. First of all, what the fuck with Mark Hamill?
He's not a good match. He's not a good fit for it.
And everyone's like, oh, he played Joker. And I'm like, yeah, but he's not creepy.
Mm-hmm.
He's Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
And he has the same voice. So Chucky in the original, his scary voice is Brad Dourif, but his like talking voice is like a 5-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Like they hired another actor. But Mark Hamill is him the whole way through, which bothers me. I'm like, why is this old dude in your fucking Chucky doll?
Mm-hmm. And like, he doesn't like the whole thing with him playing Joker. He like disguises his voice. Like it's really hard to. Like I watched Star Wars and the animated Batman a lot, and I didn't know that Mark Hamill did the Joker because he did such a good job at, you know, disguising his voice and becoming the character.
Exactly.
But he doesn't do that in this movie. It's kind of like you gotta know they like made a purpose to make sure that you knew it was Mark Hamill voicing him.
Yes, so that was one of it. Second part, they took the entire serial killer voodoo witchcraft out of the movie, that's not a Chucky movie if there isn't a murderer involved, and I'm upset. And it's like this whole learning to be bad concept and AI and smart tech, and it's just stupid. All I wanted was a possessed doll and my freaking murder rampage doll that just needed to swap souls with somebody.
And I thought they were going to do that like in the beginning.
Oh yeah, I thought so too. Also, what a shitty... Like that whole beginning was shitty because they set it up to feel like it was going to be about a murder because trigger warning, this guy commits suicide in the very beginning of the movie and sets it up like this idea that he's going to be like in the doll, like he tampers with the doll.
Yeah.
But then they didn't do anything with that, and I was like, whoa, I wouldn't mind if they switched the murderer. I just wanted a murderer.
Yeah, no, and because it's like, or I thought he was going to put a curse on the doll. Some way.
I would have taken that even. That he made the doll come to life with magic, but this stupid learning to be bad shit, I'm not for it. It was dumb. It was stupid. The whole controlling all the other Chucky dolls and stuff was stupid. The whole concept was dumb. The whole movie is dumb. The reboot is complete trash. I can't believe they dragged Mark Hamill into it. Brad Dourif, they didn't even ask me to do the voice. The original writers were asked to come in and write for it, and they took one look at the proposed script and they backed out.
Yeah, no, because it's
and I'm like, that should fucking say something.
Yeah, because it's not, it just feels like a really, like a particularly bad Black Mirror episode. And I'm not like a major fan of Black Mirror. They kind of lost me a bit.
Specifically the Black Mirror episode with like the robot dog thingy that hunts you down.
You know, I didn't see that one, but that one's fine.
That's specifically, if you like that episode of Black Mirror, then you will like the 2019 reboot. I do appreciate that Aubrey Plaza's in it. I do like her. She's a really good actress, and I feel like she's incredibly underrated. I think the movie is really stupid.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it just kind of loses what it's trying to do, and I'm not even sure what it's actually trying to do half the time, other than like a very like basic like, ooh, technology, bad.
Completely. And I hate it. I hated it.
I do appreciate, the one thing I can say that I appreciated from the movie, and I don't even think it's a proper reference, but that there's a Chucky doll dressed up as a leprechaun. And I know that we talked about, we like to think that it's a reference to Leprechaun.
The horror movie Leprechaun, where he like, you know, pokos you in your lung.
Yeah, you know, great movies like Leprechaun, Leprechaun 2, Leprechaun 3, Leprechaun 4
in space,
and then Leprechaun 5 in the hood, and then
Leprechaun 6 back
in the hood. And then there's a 7, right? But it's got a different name.
Leprechaun Origins. I love it. I love it so much.
God. Those movies are great. So I thought it was a reference to that, but other than that...
and actually that was Warwick Davis who plays in Leprechaun, which hindsight, Warwick Davis probably would have been a really good Chucky actor also, but he was probably busy.
Yeah, he's got too many other things going on. Also,
in that time period, he probably would have been doing... He's old, guys. Oh my gosh. I don't even know.
Yeah, I feel like you also want him to talk, you know? Like
he has a really cool voice, yeah.
And like that's kind of like a main part of his acting is like that he's actually like a really solidly good actor.
Yeah, I agree.
And he couldn't do any of that if he was playing Chucky. He'd just be... You wouldn't even get to see his face.
Yes. Fun fact, actually, Brad Dourif, so he would be on set and he would act out scenes with Andy using his voice. But he wouldn't do any of like the doll movements or anything, but he would make the faces and rehearse with Andy.
That makes sense. So he can get an idea what the scene's going to be and stuff like that.
I do want to say something that was pointed out to me recently was that, shout out to CinemaSins for pointing this out to me when I was doing research. In the mental hospital scene, and when Chucky's coming to kill Andy, Andy is genuinely scared and is crying and sobbing and having a meltdown. Andy is 7.
Mm-hmm.
He's a child actor. He is not that good. What the fuck did they say to this kid to make him sob like that?
You know, at the time, so there's always been, so like around that time, there's been some questionable things to get children to act like that. I know that like the 4th Nightmare on Elm Street, it's one of the ones where it's Freddy Krueger's chasing a younger child. I think he's like 8 or something. I haven't seen but I saw a documentary where they were talking about it, and the mom and dad were on set because I think they were both actors actually in the movie. And so what they would do is when the director's like, okay, we need them to cry, and he's like, you know, having a good time, you know, jumping up and down, and they're like, how the hell do we do this? And so the dad said, okay, we have an idea. We can only do this like twice, by the way, and you gotta get this shot done now. And so he's like, okay. So they'd step outside, and then he'd come back, and he'd say, okay, kid, your mom just died. And then he'd just burst into tears, and then they'd just film it and hit it out as quickly as possible, and then they'd just call that good, and they would only do that like once or twice. But that's how they got him to cry on a couple of the scenes, is because they didn't know how to do it, and so that's how they did it. So they may have taken a page out of that book.
I didn't look into it. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
So that was something I was like, what did they do to this kid? All right, kitty, we're going to grind up your puppy and make you eat it.
No, Mr. Fishy!
Dr. Fishy!
No!
Y'all should see Bad Man. Is that a College Humor?
Yeah, it's College Humor.
It's College Humor's version of Batman. It's very funny. I definitely recommend it.
Shout out to The Last Robin for showing me that. And Connor O. Dot.
Connor O. Dot, if you're listening, we miss you, bud. Come see us soon.
He will.
That was ominous. Okay. So, Karen Barkley and Kevin Yeager. And Kevin Yeager isn't a name that we've said yet, but Kevin Yeager actually built the original Chucky. So, like the animatronics, the doll, he built all that stuff. So, he's the inventor. So, they met on set, and they got married a year later.
My gosh.
Isn't that crazy? Here's another crazy thing. So Kevin Yeager created Chucky, and Brad Dourif voiced Chucky. They didn't meet in person until 2018 at a convention for horror movies.
It's so strange that happened. And then that Kevin Yeager married, what was her name again?
She played Karen. Hold on one second. She played Karen. Katherine Hicks.
Yeah, that those two got married, and I'm sure Katherine Hicks and Brad Dourif, like,
they had to have known each other because Brad was on set with Alex.
Yeah, and so like it's just strange that they never met.
You know, and it's insane to me. The film was released on the same date as the opening scene, so November 9th, 1988.
That's fun.
The movie was released the day that Charles Lee Ray died.
That's fun.
So composer John Renzetti and singer-songwriter Simon Stokes recorded an ending credits theme song about Chucky the doll that wasn't used because it wasn't scary enough. The song can be... Although, if you find the original 1988 trailers for Chucky, the song is used in one of them. Mm-hmm. So the animatronic eyes that Chucky has, they were also used in Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Yeager moved them to his next movie. And Chucky's full name, Charles Lee Ray, is derived from 3 serial killers. Do you have a guess?
Charles Manson.
Yes.
Lee something, and then Ray. You know, I don't know that many serial killers.
Well, it's one serial killer. It's 2 other just murderers. Very infamous murderers.
Lee Patton Oswalt?
No, not Patton Oswalt. Oh
no, Lee Patton Oswalt. 2 middle names.
No. When I tell you who that is, you're gonna... Oh, God. Do you have the last one?
Ray Charles? The jazz singer?
He's not a murderer.
I'm just making guesses now.
Okay, so Lee Harvey Oswald. No, Patton Oswald. Which is what?
Same dynamic range.
Oh my God, no. Lee Harvey Oswald is in like JFK's.
Oh, yeah.
And then James Earl Ray.
I know that guy.
You do. You know him because he assassinated Dr. King.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Yes, you do know him. Speaking of giant controversy, there was huge controversy for this film.
Mm-hmm.
And so, during the initial release, a large crowd of protesters formed at the main entrance of MGM, calling for a ban on the film because they claimed it would incite violence in children. There were like TV stations there, and there were news reporters, and they were broadcasting the whole thing live. So the producer, David Kirshner, was watching the demonstration on TV and was upset. So Jeffrey Hilton, who was working in Kirshner's office, indicated that he could quell the disturbance in 10 minutes, make it go away. And while Kirshner was watching from the safety of his office, Hilton spoke to the group's leader and shook his hand. The group instantly dispersed, much to the chagrin of the newscasters. The newscasters were upset.
They were expecting...
Hilton did not reveal to Kirshner whether it had been a threat or a simple diplomacy that saved the day. So we still don't know if it was like niceness or he said, "I will murder your children."
God.
So we don't know. He could have said anything. He could have been like, "I'll get you into the local strip club," or "Is this all because you didn't get to see the movie? Because I can get you in for a private screening." We have no idea what he said to make it happen, but they went. Hilton's diplomacy notwithstanding, the film series was plagued with accusations of inciting violence in children. Child's Play 3 was cited as the inspiration for 2 murders which took place in the United Kingdom in December 1992 and February 1993. What the fuck, UK? And I can say...
That's
this sounds like an American issue.
That's like well, I mean, they are the people that like burn an effigy and then walk it down the streets every year before Halloween. So, I mean, like, what do you expect?
Oh, God. So, I actually read a little bit about the murder of Suzanne Capper. I didn't read about the murder of James Bulger because James Bulger was a toddler, and I just did not want to read that. But I read about the Suzanne Capper case, and, like, she was forced to listen to I'm Chucky Wanna Play, like, song recordings while they tortured her.
What?
It was awful. It's awful. Please, like, don't look into it. It's terrible. And so, but Tom Holland responded to both murders, and he was commented saying that viewers of horror movies could only be influenced by their content if they were unbalanced to begin with. And I kind of agree with that a little bit, where it's like, well, yeah, because your average Joe isn't going to see Annabelle and then go kill someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and so, like, I don't know. It's gruesome. You don't really want to go look at it. But yeah, no, there is a real conversation that should be happening. Is that, like, what does our media influence our kids? Like, does media influence the way we perceive the world? And I feel like that's a very important argument to have. I think Chucky is probably not a great example.
No, I would.
But at the same time, I feel like it's not necessarily like to blame.
Yeah. Well, it's very detached from reality.
And I think that's the thing, is that like a doll coming to life is not something that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think movies that are really scary are movies that people that are supposed to be satire that people take as like seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's just something where it's like, but so that there is controversy surrounding the release of the Chucky movies. Let's talk about fan fiction.
Why is there fan fiction of Chucky? That's one
It's
that's
just
more back.
Literally a cult classic.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Okay, so I looked into it today.
I bet that was fun.
There is a lot of fan fiction. Like, a lot. So much stuff. Everything from, like, Nika and Chucky being together to what happened to Andy after Chucky. Also, spin-off of, like, Chucky revenge fan fictions. There's even a Glenn and Glenda fan fiction about what, like, both of them taking a murder pact. It's very wild, and enter at your own risk to that stuff. There's also all sorts of drawings, all sorts of things like that. But, like, there is, like, fanfiction.net has an entire chapter of Chucky fanfiction.
Oh my God.
I didn't read any of it. I read the synopsis of a couple of them to kind of get a baseline. It's all over the board. I mean, you'll find what you want.
You'll find, okay.
It's everywhere. And then for my ending of random tidbits and my close to end of our podcast, there's a new TV show.
Yep, just about to come out. Has it already come out?
No, it's airing on Sci-Fi on October 6th, so right after this podcast goes up. I'm very, very excited. Sorry, October 16th is when...
I was going to say, today is the 6th.
Sorry, October 16th.
Or
So right after this podcast goes up. So it's starring the original cast.
Yeah, well, kind of. From what I've read, it's like they're going to make appearances, but they might not be like...
So the main storyline involves a new kid, but all of the original cast is in it. And most importantly, Brad Dourif is back as Chucky. And Fiona Dourif is in it as well. Nika,
But she's like really important now. So
she is so important.
Without spoiling things, she's really important.
You should really watch the entire series. I mean, if you have to skip Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't add a ton to the story, but they do... they don't ignore it. They don't retcon it. They do acknowledge that happened and keep going.
Which is really gutsy, considering that Seed and Bride are both objectively bad or objectively just incredibly crazy.
I love them.
They're interesting to watch.
They're worth a watch. But after you see them one time, you probably don't need to watch them ever again.
Yeah, they're definitely like a...
The only thing they add to the plot is Glenn and Glenda and Tiff, and Glenn and Glenda aren't really mentioned again, but Tiffany comes back up later, so...
Yeah, she seems more... Yeah.
And so that's important, but everything else is just like...
She looks like Jennifer Tilly.
Oh my God, stop. And so, it takes place right after the cult of Chucky. And the official synopsis of the show is, after a vintage Chucky doll turns up at a suburban yard sale, an idyllic American town is thrown into chaos as a series of horrifying murders begin to expose the town's hypocrisies and secrets. Mm-hmm. Supposedly, this series is starting to take place of the idea of what if Andy was actually the murderer the whole time, but with this new kid. Where it takes this idea of it's all of Andy's rage that he feels into this doll that brings it to life and makes it a murder, which was the original idea for Chucky, was to make it like a blood pact, and it's actually going to be called My Blood Buddy. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of spinning off that idea of what if you took all of your emotions and put it into this doll and it came to life. Except for that, we do know the doll is possessed by Charles Lee Ray because it's literally a continuation.
But they're trying to hide it more in this one.
And it's trying to play off like the original concept. It has the original writers. Mm-hmm. What more could you ask for?
I mean, we're going to go into this very optimistic. And I really hope that they don't somehow do something really crazy with it and just ruin it in some way. But it seems like a fairly solid premise.
Like in the famous words of RuPaul, and don't fuck it up.
Exactly. There's a chance that it could happen, but I'm going to pretend like that's not going to happen.
You know, we can all hope. We can all hope. We can definitely all hope forever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that is pretty much the end of our podcast tonight. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
I definitely recommend watching these movies. Don't watch them with kids or they'll have nightmares forever.
Mm-hmm. Yep, watch 1 through 3, and then if you're like, okay, this is really good, continue on. If you're like, nah, then probably stop.
You're probably good.
And then probably watch...
you want to watch Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky.
Yeah, you can skip Bride and Seed
if you want
sure.
to. I would say you could skip Seed for sure. You could watch Bride if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Bride at least introduces you to Jennifer Tilly.
Well, Tiffany. It gets kind of weird.
It gets complicated.
It gets so complicated. It gets needlessly complicated.
Jennifer Tilly is Mike Wazowski's girlfriend in Monsters, Inc., if you're not familiar with that name.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's that. Anyways, as usual, you can follow The Worst Generation on YouTube. Also, you can follow their new Instagram at The Worst Band Practice and follow up what they're doing with their music stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can find Random Reviewer on this page. You can also find my Instagram at Random Reviewer Pods or my brand new TikTok at The Real Random Reviewer.
Yeah.
And if you love ducks, you should come check it out.
Yeah. TikTok.
It's a new thing. We're working on it. And as usual, we are excited to hear about what you guys want us to be watching, doing, talking about. So leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell so that you can get the notification when we upload. And have a fantastic Spooktober. Bye.
Goodbye.